America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there online people?
I don't see anybody yet, but we can still roll anyway.
Okay.
Is there a one by the little people?
Yeah, I looked at,
Oh,
thank
okay.
you.
Yeah.
So I thought the same thing too. I got
Oh, okay.
excited, but it's just me.
Just
Okay, roll call, Diane Ermani.
Here, present.
And Ted Coutilish.
Here.
Sean Cotton.
Here.
Dr. Tuttle.
Kevin Nugent.
And we have Marcus Ambrozy.
Hi, everybody.
Marcus.
And Diane Karabetsos. Jeup. We have Ellisse Thompson, Juli, Rybicki. We also have Stanley. And anybody online yet? Not yet?
I don't see anything.
Okay. All right, so approval of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Support.
Okay, so we have a presentation from Hanover Research today, and they're going to be talking about the survey. We found a company that already works for our district that has cost us no money, no additional money, to take all the ideas that we've had and compile them, and they're bringing out the first presentation.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I peeked, it came out last night, and so I peeked, it's looking pretty good, so.
Good.
Can't wait to present it, so they're here, are they online?
So I don't see them online yet, but I can chat just a little bit until you see them come out there. So want to give you guys sort of a rundown of where we are right now based off of our previous meeting. I've got this wire in the way. Hey Sierra, how are you?
Hi Sierra.
Can you hear us okay? Great, perfect. So our last meeting, as you guys recall, we shared some of the I like to walk around. We shared some of the previous survey that was out there. We took a look at it, and then we asked a homework assignment of you to be able to break them down, say which ones you liked, which ones you were like, I'm not quite too sure about, and then there was a lot of commentary involved, which I thought was extremely helpful information. What was really interesting was I think the majority of people liked the same questions, but when it came to the ones that we didn't like so much, there was just like a variety of different ideas. So from that, what we did was we compiled your information and we kind of clumped them all together, and we started having different conversations about, okay, should we be creating this survey? What is this going to look like overall? And talking with Alexa and speaking with Ginny, a little light bulb kind of came into play. We have been working with a company previously in the past called Hanover Research. And if you're not familiar with Hanover, Hanover works with school districts across the entire country, and they create a variety of survey templates for school districts, and they're based off of lots of really well thought out, well asked questions, because wording really matters, right, of what this is going to look like overall. So since we already had a contract with them, it was like, okay, well, why don't I just reach out to them, right? Like, why recreate the wheel or anything? So we met with them probably like 2 days after this meeting. 2 days after you guys shared your information with us. And we shared with them what it was that you were looking for. Specifically, we were really talking about how our previous survey was just extremely long. You know, it didn't really go into, we needed it to be more of a tree that could go into a variety of different branches so that people won't feel like it's going to have to take them 25 minutes to do so. What was great was they were able to produce all of that for us. We also told them that our turnaround time was going to be rather quick because our next meeting was going to be on March 6th. What would it be if you produced something for us? So after having chatted with them, after having shared the information, they were able to create a survey for us that I know that they will be here soon, and I'll just tell you what, if they're not, I've got a copy of the survey, and so that we can just kind of go through that, if that makes some sort of sense. One of the things that I do want to tell you though is when we do take a look at this survey, you're going to see it at first and you're going to go, there's 50 questions. What the heck? It's not 50 questions. It's just based off of the tree. And so you guys are going to be seeing the entire survey as a whole, right? How we've had to create this though, because I know that what we were originally talking about was a community survey. How are we going to be reaching out to the community? So we're talking parents in the district, people that no longer have kids here anymore. Based off of that and based off of what Hanover was talking about, it really was important to create a very similar survey, not just for community members, but for staff members, for students as well. Because that's where you're really going to be able to get that good data and that good feedback from to be able to compare some certain things that are out there. So I don't know if I see them in here yet, so we'll just wing it. I can tap dance real quick if you want to do that.
My business, this is a great ad lib, by the way, you're stretching.
Ryan.
I'm good at that.
But I gotta tell you, Ryan, you make a great student. He's just been sitting there, just like listening. I really do appreciate that. So what I'll do though is because we do have that copy up there, while we're waiting for them to come up, because I think it's really good for you to understand like the context and where things were coming from, and like why we really do feel like this is the right decision. I guess I'll say most importantly, it's great to have an outside party to be able to conduct this. Because immediately that's going to remove the bias, right? You're going to have an outside party that has conducted this research and this survey template for you. They collect the information and then they're basically able to share what that looks like for us in a rather quick turnaround time. What we talked about before was that turnaround time took a really long time because it was one of our employees having to compile all of the fill in the blanks type of things. What you'll see on the survey, very, very limited options to be able to say, hey, what are your real thoughts that go along with it? That's really important to know, but we really think that how we've set these questions up now, we're still going to be able to get a really positive feel about where we stand as a district overall. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and share that with you, but I do want to be able to answer any questions for you because this might be the first time that you're hearing this. And so if you do have any questions, feel free to shout them out. Ted.
So can we set up the expectation of how the results will be presented?
Say more. I mean, because, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the question that they
I mean, we can get the raw data from them. They also have some great analytics that they would be presenting to us too.
because this is what part of my job is
Correct.
to present things like this. So instead of just like when we saw it last year, the data, it's kind of hard to go through. There's a million comments.
Yep.
There's a million things to look at. You don't really know what to look at and what to do. So what I would recommend is a PowerPoint presentation
Mm-hmm.
that has been summarized, like an executive summary of the results based on charts and graphs and easy to follow things, and then selected comments, for example, in some of the slides where you have a link to the rest of the comments,
Mhm.
but these are representative comments. It just makes it a lot easier to digest for people who don't know how to, are not
Correct.
accustomed to reading survey results.
Yep, and I'm glad that I asked you to say more because 100% that is their plan, what they do. They provide the real data to us, but at the same time they do have a nice summary. I like a lot of different colors that I would see out there. I'm a visual person, and so I thought that was extremely pleasing to the eye, some of the things. Another item that's helpful too is many of these questions are similar questions to what they ask in other school districts that are out there, right? We love Grosse Pointe Public School System, but again, it's not like we always have to really recreate the wheel because school districts are asking very similar questions that are out there. And what's nice about this is when you see some of those questions, you can also compare it to how this question was responded to some of the other districts. You know, it could be similar districts that are out there, but from across the country. So we thought that that was really helpful too. So it was a really cool instrument to be able to dive into, and Hanover really has done a great job working with us. But they're not here, so that's okay. Diane.
Decide how they're going to disperse this, like, to people that don't maybe use a computer, or is it gonna go to every home? We talked about that before. Senior.
So that's a good question. I think right now the only conversation that we've really been having has been the digital surveys that were out there. I think that the benefit of having the digital survey is it's just that very easy, immediate feedback that you were able to get. But I think what we can do by that is make links a little bit more helpful rather than you have to fill out this entire page. But I think that's something that we could probably talk about.
Yeah, even like people that, the students have left the district,
Sure.
you know, that you wanna reach and you know, and see what they really thought of it, why they left, if they went to private school.
Mm-hmm.
So Diane, for people who don't have access to computers and are not technology savvy, if they have the executive summary, that could be made available in print to those folks.
Well, the summary, but you're not getting their input. And, I mean, would there be something, how they know that that's even on their computer? You know, like an ad or something in the
Yeah.
paper? Or-
As I understand it, in the surveys that are done today, they really can't do a paper survey with a live online survey. What they can do, and I've done this before, is if someone is not able to read a survey online, we read the survey to them and have us fill them out for them. And that could possibly be done. I don't want to speak out of turn, Dr. Stanley, but if someone.
Please, I'm talking with them right now. They say that they're in the waiting room, and so I'm
Okay.
just trying to figure that out.
Sure. So that's a possibility, I've done that before, where if someone's not able to fill out a survey, any survey, you could do it for them and.
Like there's a phone number they call, or?
We could put a QR code in the paper, like as an ad, if you're thinking that way, so that it reaches more than just like the people on our emailing list, if that's what you're concerned about. Like we could even talk about reaching out to the cities, in the neighborhoods, and to reach out to more than just like our community. If you're talking about trying to reach people in like private schools and alumni that maybe aren't like.
And then it would have the website, because if they don't know it's there, they can't go to the website, even if they, you know.
But it's definitely an online survey. You have to have access to a computer to be able to, or telephone, cell phone, or a tablet or something. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so I just resent them the link. It's interesting because they're like, we're in the waiting room. And I'm like, I don't see you over there. So that's okay. That's how that goes. Let me pull this up while I'm looking for them. Any other questions?
So, can you give us some background on the previous survey? How many was it sent out to, where did it go to, and then what was the response rate, if you know it?
Alexa will be able to answer that. I feel like it was like 870 people. Is that
I
correct?
completed it,
I
that doesn't mean that
think
ones
it
were
was
sent out to.
780.
Okay.
And it was open, I believe, for a couple months. And I'll have to see what else they're gonna be.
Generally, 3 to 5% rate of return is really good. So if you were above that, then you did really well.
Yeah, we have great return rates. We do. I mean, we're an involved community, and so the return rates are great. We did keep it open, I think, for a really long time previously, and so right now we're talking a shorter amount of time of what that can look like overall.
Now, this survey is really different from the previous survey, so this is really more of a foundation.
This is going to be more of a
It's a
baseline.
baseline.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. So if you will see how we have this currently set up is at this very second question out there, which of the following best describes your affiliation with the Grosse Pointe Public School System? So are you a student, are you a staff member, a parent, community member, or none of the above? If you click none of the above, right now it does disqualify, okay? It says, no response. Also, that being said, and you'll see this as you go along, with students, some of the conversations that they've seen is, first off, they said student responses are mainly way more negative than community responses that are out there. Because think about it, you're a middle school kid, and you're like, school, right? I think we have it set to 6th grade and above. So if you're saying that you're in 3rd grade, it's just going to disqualify you from the response, because what they really want to be able to get is to the heart of the matter, and they've been finding that middle school and up is where they're getting a lot of the more solid responses if they move along with it.
Can I ask, like, former students, are they clicking the student?
Probably can.
I mean, I'm guessing community member, but what if they moved out of they live in Ferndale now?
Then they'd probably be disqualified.
Like you don't want
Yeah,
alumni.
like former student still has a
Yeah, we could say alumni.
Because you could be a community member, but you could be alumnus and not a community member.
So just so that we're aware though, if you're an alumni and you're not living here in the area, most of these questions are catered towards what is your current feeling of how the school is going, right? And so, I mean, if you're living in Texas and you're alumni, I just don't know how much you'll be able to respond to that way, or if it'll kind of go along with it. I know we talked before about some very specific items out there, like what if I'm an alumni and I only played, I'm making this up, right? But I only played tennis and I had an older brother type of thing, right? Like we were getting some very, very specifics as we were moving along with it. We thought that it was still just kind of best to move along with some of the broader categories that were out there. So student, staff member, parent, community member, everything like that. I think I do see somebody join in. Oh, hi Sierra.
You're muted.
Hey Sierra. Sierra, you're muted right now.
Right, I have a question regarding student, because I think that's very valid, the question that was raised. Alumni, they can only speak on, their past experience, and we're trying to capture the current sentiment. So what if we say, are you a current student? And then if they check no, then they would be disqualified? Like if they're not a current student? Or how would we, what were the categories again?
The categories were student, staff member, parent, community member.
Oh, okay, student. Okay. So we'll eliminate alumni?
or not
Community
members.
members, yeah.
I mean, they could be under community members, so no, it's technically not eliminating them.
But I do like that idea too of adding a student from another district of some sort.
Okay.
Grosse Pointe Public School System student or student of.
I think that makes a lot of sense to add that word current too, because even for a guy like me who cares about what my experience was 30 years ago, as a student, you want my experience now as a community member, right?
So here's what I just discovered right now. You guys get to see the behind the scenes part. The Google Meet that was sent, I didn't create it. It was created by somebody else, and therefore how it was set up, the owner of it has to let them in. And so that is why they are still in the waiting room.
Can we switch it though?
So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna switch it out real quick. Sierra, I'm gonna send you a new link if you're good with that, and we'll take it from there, okay? I apologize, give me 2 minutes. I'm very sorry about this.
While we wait,
Go ahead, Alexa.
so we had 780 total responses. We had a 77% completion rate of the people that did take it, and the estimated time to complete took about 19 minutes. I can't get exactly the percentage you're looking for because it seems like it was just shared through a web link. So it's kind of just.
We don't know what the starting number is.
Yeah, we don't know. So it's just 780 people responded to this link.
But if you said 77% of those responded, then we can do the math and determine what that 780 times 77% of 780.
Those are people who started and actually finished.
Yes.
So it's a good number. It's a very good engaged number. That's great.
For our size district, is that, is it a high number or
That's a
average
very
number?
good
It's a very high number.
Yeah, anytime you're 77% in any survey, in any district, any company, you're doing fabulous. Yes. a lot of people are interested, a lot of people are engaged and concerned. And so that just shows that there's a lot of support and passion.
That would have been a link in like the Grosse Public School email blast.
Yeah, these were emails, correct, yeah.
So you'd have to be a current Grosse Public School person, I guess, to get the link. At least.
Or a parent.
I'm assuming, I wasn't here, so I'm just assuming it was probably sent out through email blast, the link was.
Yeah, so there, I don't think you use constant contact, they use an email porter system.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have various lists that you send it to, and there's usually a master list, like I have a master list that includes everyone. That's probably what they send it out to, which include staff, faculty, teachers, parents, anyone associated with the district.
You know, community members.
But not community members.
Right, community things.
Community members associated with
Yeah.
the district.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Just you'd have
We
It
do
doesn't sound
have,
like it was sent to
we
committee.
do have a community member like email section, so I will say that. So we have like parents,
Right.
staff, students, community.
But how many?
You did it.
It's not-
Can you hear us?
I don't know, but
Sure.
there's
Oh.
like this one.
Yes, I am so sorry about that. You know what I discovered was the meeting that I invited you to, I was not the owner of it, and therefore the owner needed to accept you in. And so, sorry for the wait.
And maybe in the future,
No
they
problem
can
at all,
co-host,
we were able to work it out.
What's that?
maybe in the future,
Yep.
they can co-host.
Absolutely, Ted. So that's what we'll have to do going forward. So, I tap danced for a little bit, James. I sang a song. I shared with them that I can sing with my mouth closed. That's actually a true fact. So I think they're kind of sick of me at this point. But what I did do was I shared with them some of the background information. Why we decided to come to Hanover and the work that you had been doing. And at this point, what I had started doing was I opened up the PDF to show them. But please, by all means, feel free. I will let you guys know that we do have another meeting that's coming in at 5:30, and so we'll just have to kind of crunch that in between out there. Sound good?
That sounds great.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we can quickly dive in. I'll give us very brief introductions, and then we can get to the survey itself. My name is James Kornegay. I'm a former principal and former teacher. I am the content director working with Pointe, so I help manage a lot of the research projects that we do. And we do a lot of different research projects. We do survey work, we do qualitative research like interviews, focus groups. We also do quantitative analysis, so taking large amounts of data and identifying trends and causation or correlation that we see. And then we also can do secondary style reports, so looking up information on particular topics and generating best practices reports or literature reviews, those sorts of things. I'll let Juli briefly introduce herself and then Dr. Becker.
Hi everyone, it's great to meet you. We're excited to go through this with you. My name is Juli Shenefield. I'm a relationship director here at Hanover, so my main role is to just make sure the district is maximizing the partnership with Hanover, letting them know how Hanover can support them, and just making sure they're happy with the relationship overall. So with that, I'll pass it over to Dr. Brittney Becker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the director of K-12 survey at Hanover, so work with our survey team specifically to do design and analyses, and so happy to answer any of your survey-related questions.
Well, with that, we can go on and dive into the survey. I'm glad to hear that you all have had a chance to look at it. I'm going to share my screen here.
So James, I'll clarify. I just got into the survey, and so really what we started talking about was the grouping itself. So we started talking about student, parent, community member, staff member.
Okay, great. That's helpful context. Are you all able to see that okay? Is it zoomed in enough?
Ish, yeah.
Great. So like Chris was saying, we've got, starting out, basically we want to segment and look at which respondents will view which questions. So one of the very first questions I see here is, what is your role at Grosse Pointe? That's because students will see a different set of questions than parents will, than staff members and community members. One thing that we want to think about though is where there are overlapping areas. So some questions you'll see, students, staff, and parents will essentially receive the same question, there's just slightly different wording. So for example, a parent's question might say, my child's school, whereas a student's question would say, my school. So we want to make sure that the wording makes sense and it's not confusing for anybody. So that is important, that's one of the first things that we do there. You can see in the red lettering here, those are how the questions are displayed. So in this case, this particular question is related to staff, so we drill down even a little bit further. Is this somebody who works at the district office, like Chris, or is this a teacher at a particular school, a school administrator, something like that?
Excuse me, James, could you make your screen bigger?
Yes, of
Larger,
course.
please. Thank you. That's better.
Is that better?
Perfect. We're also looking at a couple TVs over on this side.
Gotcha, no problem at all. And then in terms of the community, we want to get a gauge for how familiar they actually are with the school system. If a community member wants to participate, that's wonderful, but if they know basically nothing about the school system, we want to take that into consideration when we're garnering their opinion and weight that accordingly. Conversely, if they're very familiar with the district, that's helpful for us to know and understand as well. So that we're, again, kind of gauging their perceptions in an appropriate way. We also ask basic information, grade level, those sorts of things. We do recommend students taking climate and culture surveys because they're such an integral part to the school's climate and culture, to the district's climate and culture. However, you can see here that we've got it disqualified if by some chance there is a student in 5th grade who somehow ends up with a survey and takes it, they will be disqualified from the survey. So we recommend it for students grades 6 and up, and that's based in research around brain development, around when students can really start to kind of grasp some of the bigger pictures that come in through survey research. And then we get into some of the background questions, but before we get into this section, are there any questions on just those first few parts or how the survey itself is set up?
I have one question, so.
Sure.
Andrea, exactly got you would go.
Okay.
So at the university level, teachers would not click on the staff level, they just wouldn't.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I had a little bit.
I'm sorry, James, I'm asking the superintendent a quick question.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I'm a sidebar. At the district level, school district level, would teachers click on that staff button, or does it need to say staff/teacher?
I think
I think staff would be fine.
They're
I mean,
fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two teachers would be fine.
We've always called it staff
Okay.
survey, yeah.
That's what I wanted.
Yep.
Thank you.
So then we get into a little bit more background information here. So asking a little bit more specifics about what their role is within the school. So are they instructional staff, for example, a classroom teacher or an aide, school administrator, and then same thing with the district level, are they in administration, office staff, something like that. We also look at what school they attend. So one thing we can look at, or one thing we want to consider, is how different groups respond. So perhaps the elementary school set of respondents have slightly different perceptions than, say, middle school or high school respondents. That information could be really useful, especially when we're considering staff. Are they more content with things at the elementary school level as a teacher? Do we see a big difference between high school respondents, for example? So we do include that question there. If they're a teacher, we ask what grades they teach, how many years they've been with the district, so tenure is another thing that we can consider in their responses. And then we do want to look at teachers, students, and parents who have students who are engaged in either special education, the English Language Learner Program, or Gifted and Talented Program. Again, these segmentations help us just look at the data in a variety of ways. When we're doing climate and culture work, we might have overall positive perception, but when we break it down, we might see, for example, that students who are in a special education program have lower levels of satisfaction with their school than do students in the Gifted and Talented Program. So it's something that we want to keep in mind while we're going through the survey.
And so James, just to kind of clarify, that question could go to a parent and it could go to a staff member as well.
Correct,
Thank you.
yes. And it will also go to students, so all three groups will see this. So the first big section of the survey is looking at the emotional climate at the school level. So wanting to get some gauges and some feelings around how does your particular school operate? How do things run in terms of climate and culture? How do you feel the climate and culture is at your school? We do also ask some broader district level questions, but what we want to do is to try to get as specific as we can here in terms of their perceptions so that they've really got something they can focus on and think about.
Can you, let's also talk to, if you scroll up just a little bit, I think it's great that you have these notes that are in there so that you're really telling somebody, like think about it through this lens. Like if you are a parent over here, when you reflect on, if you could just move that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
When you reflect on students more broadly, think about your child and or your child's closest friend.
Yeah, so again, we want to give them some specifics so that they're thinking about as closely as possible what we want them to think about when they're answering these questions, and that's one reason that it's good to start with kind of the school level when we're talking about responses. This is an example of a matrix style question. We ask a lot of questions this way where we have a scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And you can see this would be the STEM that they would start with. So student at my child's school. Again, if they're a student, it would say students at my school are proud to attend the school, feel welcome at school, like school, feel like they belong at school. So starting to try to get a little bit of a feel for, do students like going to your school? And I can say anecdotally, we've done this work with hundreds of thousands of students across the country. Student perceptions are almost always more negative here than parents and staff members. Parents and staff like to think that kids really enjoy going to school. And we see that when school kids talk about going to school, they don't usually have quite the same positive perception there. But that's another reason why it's really important to try to look at the differences there, because if there's mixed perceptions, that gives you important data to help staff, parents realize and understand that you might think kids are really enjoying what you're doing, and they maybe aren't enjoying it quite as much as you think they are. Moving on to the building and personnel safety questions. So we do ask some questions here around general school safety, those sorts of things. We want to get a perspective on their feel for, do you think this is a positive climate, but also do you feel safe? Because that's obviously a really important job of the schools, and also something that's important as it relates to climate and culture. So you can see a similar setup here. We've got our STEM, my child's school, and then our scale here provides safe learning, does not have issues with violence or theft. Similarly, my child feels safe going to school, safe going to and from school, safe at school-sponsored events. And then from there, we transition into the physical environment. So thinking about some of the things that are pretty basic, but also important to how somebody feels being in the school building. The bathrooms are clean, the school is well maintained, the spaces are clean, the classroom environments are set up to support student learning, etc. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions about anything that we've gone over so far before we jump into the other sections of the survey?
I just wonder, why don't we ask a parent to fill out a survey for each school? Let's say their kid goes to a middle school as well as a high school. If we have a decision tree like this, then, and I would think that if someone's generally, for example, very happy with South, but they're unhappy with Brownell, just for example, that's meaningful. And I think that's always been sort of a issue people have had with the community survey, is that you're only able to answer the question on one school.
That's a great point.
That's a great question, and I can let Dr. Becker chime in here as well, but I can give my the quick answer there. We don't want invalid data. And what I mean by that is not all of the questions here are particular to schools, and we don't want a respondent to essentially give us two sets of data. So when we ask questions about the district as a whole, or perceptions of climate with your with your child's friends, it's difficult for parents to truly separate those two things, or more apparently, when we ask district questions, we would essentially be getting the same answer twice. And then when we do our analysis, we would be giving you information that essentially says that might be inaccurate, because rather than having like the one response, we've given a double up response. We also have language at the beginning of the survey to help parents select which child they will answer for if they have multiple children, because we want a randomized sample here. We don't want it to be just pick the one that you're most happy with, or pick the kid whose school you feel most frustrated with. We want it to be as random as possible so that when we do the analysis, the data we provide you with and the analysis we do is as accurate as possible. Dr. Becker, I don't know if I missed anything there, if that was covered in.
You have so many of my responses memorized at this point that it makes it so I will just echo that yes, so it is a data validity issue of why we only ask parents to answer for one of their students. Another part of that is that survey research is based on sampling, so kind of unlike voting, it's kind of looking at aggregate data for individuals. So again, that's kind of why we ask that is why we ask parents to answer for their student born earliest in the school year, so we get kind of a randomized group of parents, and then their average responses will give insight into what's going on at each individual school. So you don't want parents answering for the school that they are least satisfied with, because then that's going to really bias your results in a way that looks like schools aren't doing as well as they are. And this way you can get more of an accurate perception. So if a parent has a student at a school that they're really happy with and a student at a school that they aren't particularly happy with, they'll answer for one, but you'll get a good overall broader feel of, what are the averages? What is the typical experience for parents at that school? And you'll have a distribution kind of showing where those are. So you'll have some people who are very unhappy, some people who are very satisfied. And when we look at the averages, you'll be able to see kind of that trend of where are most of our responses in terms of their satisfaction and their experiences.
So looking at the next section here, thinking a little bit more about instructional climate, so trying to get a little bit more of a perception around the academic environment there. We ask questions like, does the school set high expectations for students? Does your school want students to succeed? Are the students adequately challenged? Questions like that. Because again, part of the climate and culture of a school is, how are you feeling? Do you feel it's a positive environment? There's the physical environment, but we also want to get perceptions around, are your kids really learning what you're expecting them to learn? Do you as a student feel like you're being appropriately challenged by your teachers? And here again is a really great area where we can look at the differences in responses. So students might come in and say, I don't feel challenged at all. And the teachers might think that they're really pushing kids really hard. And again, as educators, as a board, as a district office, that's important information to consider when we're thinking about how do we improve our schools, and in turn, how do we improve our academic outcomes for students.
Can I also just interject as well too? Obviously, I think as we can see this, we're seeing a lot of questions that are probably geared more towards students, parents, staff members too. James, does it make sense that if you're a community member and you don't happen to be sending kids to the school district, you would have fewer questions than if you were a parent, a student, staff member?
Right, exactly. So, a lot of these questions are asking specifically about things like, is your school clean? Which is a pretty simple question, but most community members have not visited their local school, so they won't really be able to provide that same perspective. If they don't have a child in the Grosse Pointe public school system, then they can't really answer about how challenging the academic environment is, or if students are really being given appropriate levels of work. So the community members do see less questions. That said, if a community member has either a school-aged child that's going to a non-Grosse Pointe public school, or has a child that will be potentially going to a Grosse Pointe public school, we've got a section closer to the end that asks a few questions around that so that we can start to help you gauge some of the perspective of, okay, these are parents that could have children in our school system. What do they think of Grosse Pointe public schools?
So I guess I would just like to ask this group, one, for just everyone's engagement over here, but also knowing that we're here till 5:30, that's out there. Would you like to continue looking at all of these questions right now, or would you like to take a look at the community questions out there?
Yeah.
The community questions?
I'd love to take a look at that.
Perfect.
Try to
Yeah,
get more people to the district.
yeah, that's great. James, are you good with that?
That's no problem at all.
Okay.
Most of the other questions are set up in a similar way with the matrix style question we saw. And you can see kind of the broad categories of things that we're asking around academic environment, experiences with bullying and harassment, those sorts of things. We do ask some questions around student support services, so those specialized populations, are they really engaging? Parental engagement, oftentimes we see that staff members think they're really engaging parents and parents don't feel that way. Student attitudes towards learning. Staff members' relationships with one another and within the school. Parental engagement. Perceptions of school leadership and district leadership. And then we get into some community member perceptions here. So again, this will be the section that's shown to that group that selects a community member at the beginning. Overall, what are perceptions of the school system? And then how would you rate them in these particular areas? So you'll notice that we're asking similar questions that we're asking students and parents and staff members, but it's a little bit broader. So rather than asking, are students challenged appropriately, are high achieving students challenged appropriately, we're asking kind of broadly about academic rigor and curriculum. Because again, those perceptions are important, but they're maybe a little less informed than somebody who's in the school building every single day. Then we also look about physical environment, so again, similar questions related to school leadership and district leadership. And then this is where we get into a little bit more about enrollment questions. So if the community member has a school-age child, kindergarten through grade 12, who does not attend a Grosse Pointe public school, so whether they're homeschooled or a private school or anything like that, we want to go through and figure out kind of what are the primary reasons that you chose to enroll your child's in another school. And so we've got a list here so we can get that perception. You'll see throughout the survey that it'll say display this question if question 43 is yes. So we have logic set up so that obviously if they answer no, there's no reason for them to answer question 44, so we'll just skip it. Do you have children who have not yet started school? And so then similar questions again of that group who have children that are maybe 3 years old and they're thinking about where to send their kids to school. We want to help you garner some of those perceptions around how do they feel about Grosse Pointe public school system? What's their perception there? And that's the end of the survey. So I know that was a very high-level overview, and we moved through things kind of quickly. Are there any particular questions, or Chris, is there anything that you'd like for us to review more in depth?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
James, related to question number 44, is there a narrative portion that could be included in there that perhaps, because I think that's the biggest one that I want to hear. Why are they choosing other schools? Could they write something there more than just select? Is it athletics? Is it, when they say extracurricular activities and programs, is it specific? I don't know if you include narratives, but I'd love to see what people have to say about that further.
Sure, and I will say it's easy for us to add additional options here, so we can coordinate with Chris if there's something really specific you'd like for us to ask here, or if perhaps there's one thing that you're not as interested in, like if you weren't interested in location, we can remove that one. So adding and removing options there is very simple. We can also add in an open-ended question where they're able to type a response.
The group would like that, but that's something I can.
Can you ask a multiple choice, what's the reason why you're going to the private school, but what's the reason you left? And whether it's.
Oh, so for people who left, that were in GPPSS and left. as opposed to. I guess that's what you're asking, right? Like why specifically do
That
people
covers
leave?
it though, I think. It says, what's your primary reason for enrolling outside the
Yeah.
district? That covers
I
it.
mean, I guess it'd be interesting to know though, which of those people never sent them to the district and which did and then pulled them and actually pulled them.
Right.
I don't know. Seems to me it'd be interesting data to have.
And I also think just too about the community as a whole, you know, maybe you don't have any kids in the district, but you've been paying taxes here for 35 years and your home value is tied to the success of the district.
Yep.
You are concerned with what happens with this district. So I think maybe even to Dr. Tuttle's point, just maybe one narrative question. What are your thoughts on the Grosse Pointe public school system? It could be as simple as that for people like that.
Yeah, that would be very easy for us to add in to look at, kind of give everybody the option of, is there anything else you'd like to say? What are your broad perceptions? We can do both of those. One that's asking, what are your overall perceptions of the district? And then we can give them space for any additional questions or anything like that. We could also, if you're interested in whether or not the child has ever been enrolled in a Grosse Pointe public schools, what we could do is after question 43, we could add in a question saying, has your child ever been enrolled in Grosse Pointe public school? And then that way we could start to figure out if there were respondents who had a child and they pulled them for some reason, or if they've just opted to never attend any Grosse Pointe school. Sierra, I saw your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Sierra, you're on mute.
I just have a
Siri,
comment
you're
of
fine.
food for thought if we are going to ask any type of narrative questions. So when the city did the master plan for Grosse Pointe Farms, we had just say 371 people that participated, and we got 371 narrative responses on multiple questions, and I read through all of those narratives, and actually you could probably categorize them into like maybe 10 different areas. So basically people were saying the same thing. I really like this survey and how you covered in that question 44 all the different reasons why someone enrolled outside of the district. I thought that's very well covered. And also under other, they could fill in other.
Right, and that will be like a quick fill-in that they can do, and then we'll have the open-ended question. And I'm glad you said what you did around the kind of categorizing them. When we talk about something like open-ended responses and getting more into that more pure qualitative research, the way that we analyze that is essentially what you said. We'll look at it and we'll code responses based on what the common themes are so that we can give you an adequate analysis there. We have a qualitative team that's dedicated to doing that sort of thing exactly, so we're more than happy to do that.
James, can you talk about that briefly? There was a question before you came on just about what an executive summary looks like. So let's say to the point the survey has been sent out, the survey has now been closed. Now what happens?
Great question. So what we'll do after that, once the survey is closed, our team will go through data cleaning. So we want to look for high quality responses. So in other words, we look at like average time that it took to complete the survey. We're estimating for this it'll be 10 to 12 minutes, somewhere around there. But if we have a 9th grader who took it in 2.5 minutes, that might be a response that we want to look twice at to make sure that we're really only incorporating those that are higher quality responses. Or if, for example, they selected, you can strongly disagree on every single question for every single category, that might be something that we would consider not including. So we go through and we do data cleaning to ensure that anything that we are including in the survey is a high quality response. We'll do that, and then we start to organize the data and think about how to best provide you with an analysis. Typically that comes through an executive summary like you mentioned. So what we would do is offer usually 2 or 3 recommendations for the district based on what the data yields. That could be something like I mentioned, we're seeing a discrepancy between student perceptions of school and staff perceptions of school. And that might be something that you can investigate further, or perhaps there's some ways to approach that through professional development. And then we'll offer key findings. So that can vary depending on, again, what the data yields, but somewhere between 8, 10, 12 key findings, something like that. That has a little bit of narrative explaining what the data yields, and then has charts to support that. So we'll create charts based on the responses here that help you visualize the differences in staff, student, and teacher responses, or overall trends that we're seeing. We can do all of that. And then towards the end of that report, if we're considering some of these open-ended questions, we'll have some open-ended analysis as well, again, based on the coding and evaluation of that. That will be the kind of static deliverable, and we'd be happy to share that with you all so that you can look through the results. One other thing that we're going to do for you all is create a dashboard. So we'll take the data, we'll upload it. The dashboard's really useful because you're able to filter and look at different results. So we were talking earlier, for example, about special education students versus ELL students versus gifted and talented students. The dashboard will be able to set up so you can filter that way and look at how did this group of respondents respond to questions. We can also set it up so if you wanted to look at a particular school's responses, you could look at just that school's responses, and it really gives you a useful way to interact with the data for further consideration. Another thing that's really helpful with that dashboard is we recommend doing climate and culture survey work annually. And if you do this survey again this time next year, we can set it up so that you can look at changes over time. Ideally, based on the data that you receive here and the work that you as a committee are doing, we will see more positive perceptions next year than we do in this first administration. So there's a lot of benefits to that as well.
Great.
I have a question. I'm not comfortable with the community person. The majority of Grosse Pointe don't have kids in school, okay? And if we exclude renters, are we excluding renters? And if you're talking about taxpayers, the elderly that will probably be paying a millage if there is one, what questions are you asking them? How are, do people communicate so they know what's going on? Do they get the paper? I'd like to see some questions that would help them feel part of it.
Okay.
I didn't quite make that one out. I'm sorry, I wanted to.
Pardon?
I think she was trying to define, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Were you trying to define that there's a variety of different types of community members here? Is that what you mean?
Right.
I think she's asking if we're giving them a voice. Community members who don't have a sufficient voice in the survey, community members who don't have kids in the district.
Yeah, so I think what our plan would be, and so Diane, are you kind of more gearing towards like, how are we going to deliver this to make sure that everybody has the chance to be able to
I don't see any
respond?
questions for them. I have lots of friends that are grandparents. They drive their kids to the schools. They have some ideas, but you're not even asking of the grandparents or how they receive their news.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the questions off my head, but
Okay.
I don't feel like they're part of this survey.
Okay, so even if some of the questions, I know that they were a little broad, but they were just asking like, if you're a community member, because I would put that under the category of a community member,
Right.
of saying, what is your perception of the schools? Because that's what some of those questions were about. You were saying you wanted more questions based?
Well, I'm not sure how are you distinguishing with the community? Can every renter answer those? Can businesses?
I mean, I believe it should be anybody who lives within the Grosse Pointe, within our school community should be able to respond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me understand this a little bit better. Not everyone in the community is getting this survey. Just not. They have a list of people they have a list of good emails in their system. That's who they're sending it out to, which may or may not include those grandparents. But if it includes those grandparents,
Then maybe you don't want that.
then they would fall into the community, and there would be an open-ended question based on
I think we would
Tuttle's.
want anybody in the community, anybody who feels like they're a stakeholder.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're gonna try and get this as broadly out there as possible, not just via email.
Yeah, so, and sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
And so we were talking about a couple of those options last time that we were here. How can we get that out? If it's a QR code, you know, can we contact our local municipalities if they've got a monthly issue that's gonna be going out that way? We have to make sure that the timing is great because this isn't going to be open for 2 months or anything like that, but you know, I think, you know, between the work of Alexa and me and some others, we can probably get QR codes that are out there, just within the points, so.
We can actually do
responses.
QR codes when we send you the information, so we can do that on your behalf.
Okay, excellent, that'd be great.
Hey Chris, I think we're getting low on time. I have a number of concerns and questions. How do we get those to, who do we get them to and
Yeah.
how?
That's a great point, so Ginny, what
Why
Ginny and I
don't
were,
we, yeah,
go ahead.
why don't you send, and Ken, thank you so much for all the input you put the first round, it was amazing, and, we wanna take more of that and get it in here. But maybe make a list of, like the add-ons or the remove stuff. CC Chris and I, and we'll meet right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll meet on Monday.
And we're sending this questionnaire around to everybody right after this.
Yeah, so what
Yeah.
we'd like to do is, we will send the draft to you, but just please know it is a draft that's out there. Because I know as soon as something gets out, all of a sudden people are like, oh, this is it, it's locked in. It is still a draft, and so it's just gonna be important for you to be taking a look at this. I would suggest not sharing it out, because then that kind of could taint some of the work that's out there. We want your feedback though, so please take a look at it and provide the feedback. Our focus obviously is always going to be the community part. I hope you'll understand why it was important for us though to really focus on adding the students, the parents as well, because these questions do need to be similar and you don't want to send 15 different types of surveys out there. So you do see that in there, but our focus really is going to be what does that community part look like? And so Diane, you had some great questions along that, and so I want to be able to provide your voice into it.
Yeah, and we
so-
were thinking to, let's, if you get all the feedback by next Wednesday, so that gives us 7 days from
Yep.
today to get it all. Chris and I will meet, we'll, circle back with Hanover, and thank you, and go from there.
I'll run into Kevin at Ace Hardware and we can talk about it.
Do you know, like, how
Yeah.
many, because since it is a tree, how many questions each group will typically be asked?
Did you hear that question, James? Since it is a tree, how many questions does each group get?
Yeah, I can let Brittney speak to that. Like I said, time-wise, we're looking at about 10 minutes or so, but it varies quite a bit because, like you saw, some of those are like you'll see an extra question if you answered yes to this one. But Brittney, I don't know if you have that specific number.
We can definitely provide that. It's definitely a lot longer for instructional staff and high school age students, a little bit shorter for middle school students, and the district staff and community member portion is currently kind of the shortest section. So in ranking of how many questions people are answering, that's kind of the rank order of length, but every group is a little bit different, but we can calculate that as we figure that out for y'all.
Great. Well, thank you. We are short on time in that we're having some people come in here, but these are all valuable conversations, and so we certainly appreciate it. Like Ginny said, let's keep the conversation going. We will send this draft survey over to you. Please feel free to share your thoughts, and we can move forward. Thank you from Hanover. We certainly appreciate it. And Sierra, it was great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Nice to be with you. Bye-bye.
Okay, any new business?
Should we do a quick branding update?
Yes.
Would you like me to do it?
Yes.
Well, actually, I think we changed a few things around, so I think Dr. Stanley can do it.
Yeah, that's fine. So our branding committee has, we have narrowed it down to 3 finalists that were out there. We tallied all the votes from everybody that was on the branding committee. There is, on the March 12th board meeting, we have asked the 3 finalists that we would like the board to review to create a half-hour video, an up to half-hour long video to be able to send to me by Friday afternoon. And basically, it's just them reviewing the RFP, what it is that they can be able to share, so that I can share it out with the board. The board will then review it over the weekend. We've asked, though, the marketing firms, the final 3 marketing firms, to attend the meeting in person, so that there could be 10 minutes worth of questions for each of those folks that are out there to move along with it. A decision will not be made that night, obviously, but then we'd be looking for a final decision in the board meeting after that. What is that, the 19th? Yeah.
And we're going to send the 3 presentations to all committee members, hoping that all committee members of all of our committees review them and come to the board meeting this Tuesday at 6:30 p.m.
So you'll email it out?
Yes,
Yeah.
as soon as they're received.
Yeah, I asked Friday by 1 p.m. That's what I asked.
Okay, this Friday by 1:30? I just wanna make sure.
You won't get it by 1 o'clock. They'll, I asked them to send it to me by 1 o'clock. Yeah, we'll send it to you as soon as we can.
Any other new business? Community members, any comments? Okay, any committee member comments? Oh, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.